Community and Economic Development Committee will now come to order. I'll announce first, item 2 will be continued for 1 week to October 26th. There are no objections from the committee members. Okay, such will be the order. Can I have staff read item number 1?
Item number 1 is a CRA and CLA report relative to authority to approve a direct payment to the Urban Land Institute for $7,500 for sponsorship of the Urban Land Institute Los Angeles second annual Future Build Conference.
Okay. If there are any questions from the committee, if there are no questions from the committee members, then what we'll do is approve the CLA's recommendation. Okay. Such is the order of the committee to approve the CLA recommendations on item number 1. We'll come back to item number 3 in a minute. Can staff please read item number 4?
Item number 4, LAHD CAO report and resolution relative to authority to submit an application to the State Department of Housing and Community Development for allocation of Calhoun grant funds of approximately $1.5 million or up to the maximum grant amount permitted by the notice of funding availability and execute the grant agreement.
Okay. And we're on item number 4. If there are no objections, we don't have any public comment cards on any of those items so far. If there are no objections, we'd like to approve the CAO's recommendations on item 4. Okay, such would be the order. Now we'll go to item number 5. Staff, please read item 5.
Item number 5 is communication from the mayor and CAO relative to notification to submit a grant application to the Governor's California Emergency Management Agency for the 2011 California Gang Reduction Intervention Prevention Program for $1 million in grant funds.
Okay. We have a public comment card on item number 5. We are now on item number 5. Public comment on item number 5 is now open. Antonia Ramirez filled out a card on item 5. Please start the clock. Thank you.
Good morning. As you know, with the gang reduction, especially focusing in the East LA community, in the East LA, which is a safe sanctuary haven for criminal illegal aliens and gangbangers, you also will notice that most of these Latino areas, when you have a Latino population deputy, such as Deputy Cruz, Aguirre, Henry Romero, Daniel Lopez, Lomeli, Pedro Mejia, Valencia, Duran, Female Sandoval, Female Parra, Pacheco, Martinez, J. Murillo, Hector Andujo, and George Bernal. These deputies at the East LA Sheriff's Department have already been written up against with the Department of Justice, and what they have done is they have acted in a corrupted manner, where they have aided and abetted gangbangers. The criminal empire and gangbangings are at an all-time high and an epidemic in East LA. Why? Because the East LA Sheriff's Department, mostly Latinos, have conspired and bullied law-abiding citizens, including military veterans. Again, when you have a large community of Sheriff's Department or Police Department in a community, whether it be in East LA Sheriff's Department or the Police Department's community, you have Latinos. They are only going to escalate and promulgate more criminal empires, including the gangbanging infestations. I can tell you that from experience. They have filed false charges, planted false evidence, and what they do is they create an environment of hostility, bullying, and fear and intimidation against those of us who are law-abiding, including military veterans. So what I'm asking Sheriff Libaca is to disperse these Latinos and bring in more whites, blacks, as well as Asians into the Latino communities, so we can get the Chango gangbangers in uniform out of those communities and stop the escalation of gangbanging activities and all the Chango racketeering enterprises. Again, the most wicked are the Latino gangbangers, and it is out of control. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes public comment on item number 5. If there are no objections from the members, we'd like to move and approve the CAO's recommendations on item 5. Okay, such is the order. Now we'll go back to item number 3.
Item number 3 is LAHD CAO report relative to authority to release a request for proposals for a long-term servicing contract and approval to execute a short-term extension of the current loan servicing contract.
Good morning, David Zates, Los Angeles Housing Department. The department is requesting approval to issue an RFP for a loan servicer to service its amortizing loans. We're requesting to be able to issue a 3-year contract with 2 one-year renewals. The contract would be subject to funding availability.
Okay. I have a question for the department. What's your experience if you go out with this kind of RFP on a 1-year basis instead of a 3-year basis?
Last time, we had plenty of servicers at the table asking questions, some larger servicers there, but we only received 1 or 2 proposals. We were very surprised. We went back and asked why we had like 10 servicers sitting around the table asking questions, but only so few responses. Their response is that the contract was too short. There are some costs associated with bringing...
Hold on one second. As a result of that, it seemed like you had quite a bit of interest and activity for people to try to find out whether or not they were going to participate in the RFP process. How many firms actually participated and submitted a completed RFP?
It was either between 1 and 2.
Okay. Let's just say it was 2. Was that number 2 drastically less than the number of firms that had inquired?
Yes.
Okay. And then the length of the contract, was that an issue that was fed back to you guys? Did you inquire as to why so many people dropped off?
We had staff inquire, and the answer was yes.
Okay, so that was one of the most glaring answers.
Right, and the reason for that is that there are some costs associated with boarding loans. And so in order to make it economically viable to incur those costs, they wanted to see a longer contract.
Okay, all right. And the CAO, you have some concerns?
Sure. First, Anne Marie Sauer with the CEO. I want to clarify the department's original request is actually for a 3-year contract with 2 3-year renewal options for a total term of 9 years. And it was the advice of the city attorney that the department actually only execute a 1-year contract with 2 1-year renewal options, given the funding sources and the uncertainty of the funds. And then, in addition, the city attorney said that anything over a 3-year contract is a violation of the charter, and I believe Neil may be able to add some.
Well, I wasn't the attorney on the matter. I discussed it on the phone with a colleague this morning, and that is what she said, that under the charter, the total maximum term of the contract could be 3 years, and that we couldn't, and it was recommending the 1-year initial term with the 2 1-year options based upon the funding availability.
Okay, but if the maximum is 3 years, what's wrong with recommending a 3-year contract?
Well, her concern was whether or not we would have funding up front for the full 3 years of the term.
Well, whether or not we have funding is something that I think the department should answer, not a city attorney. How do we do when it comes to funding? Do we, in 08, 09, we had funding, budget year, budget year 9-10, we had no funding, budget year 10-11, we had no funding. What's been the experience with the department on these kinds of grants?
We've had funding continuously for this contract. We have not had to go back and refund this contract.
Okay, but give me an example, please. We've had funding for this contract consistently for 2 years straight, 3 years, 5 years?
Consistently for this contract for 3 years.
For 3 years. And so is there any reason for anybody to believe that we wouldn't have activity to the nature of what these people are applying to provide services for in any given year going forward over the next 3, 4, 5 years?
There's no reason to believe that we wouldn't have funding, but to help protect ourselves, we can make the contract subject to the availability of funding.
Okay. But are they being paid a fee for activity, or are they being paid a fee for sitting on the bench waiting for something to do?
They're being paid for a fee for activity.
Okay.
So if they do normal loan servicing, it's one fee. If they end up having to do foreclosure, there's additional costs for foreclosure.
Okay. So I could see if there's a concern that we would actually hire not understand whether or not we have going to have consistency of activity, and they're getting a monthly fee to sit there and wait for activity that we can't guarantee is going to happen. But it sounds like this is the kind of contract that as activity occurs, then they garner fees, therefore we pay them. But if activity does not occur within a month or a year or what have you, then they're sitting on the bench waiting but not getting paid, correct?
So there's constant activity on each of the amortizing loans because there's activity monthly on those. Sometimes on certain loans, additional activity must take place. The best example would be foreclosure. So if they have to provide additional activity, there may be additional fees.
But either way, we're not, this is not the kind of contract where if we contracted with them, we would be having to pay for no service.
We are paying for services.
Yeah, it's pay for service.
Right.
Not pay for time or pay for waiting, because that's what happens sometimes. Sometimes somebody needs to have somebody such as with attorneys on retainer. I mean, they pay them, just be there in case we need them. And in this case, it's not a retainer type situation. It's a fee for activity type situation. Okay, but back to what's that? Reimbursement. Yeah, but they're reimbursed for activity done, not for sitting around saying we hung around for 30 days and we didn't do anything, but you owe us money. So, but I've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, I could have sworn I've seen the city of LA approve contracts of a 3-year basis with the option of 1-year extensions on top of that. Am I wrong?
We do everything.
Mostly, sometimes it's even frustrating to me, is that we're doing a 3-year contract with a 1-year option to extend. But all of a sudden, I'm hearing that there's a city attorney who's saying that no 3-year contract, only a 1-year to 1-year to 1-year contract.
Well, what she was saying was that the maximum term under the charter would have been a 3-year contract, but she was recommending the 1-year term because she wasn't sure that there was the funding for the full 3 years up front.
Yeah.
That was.
Well, I appreciate her opinion on the first part, because to me, that's a legal question, but I don't appreciate her concern on the second part, because that's a policy decision that we need to be informed by the department that actually is involved in that activity. That's not a legal matter. And if I were the CAO, I'd be a little bit bothered, because that's what we pay the CAO to do, to give us their opinion and second-guess the departments as to whether or not it makes policy sense and then make a recommendation. So why isn't this city attorney here?
I don't know. We asked her to come down.
Okay. Well, you can let her know that when this gets to council, I wouldn't advise it, but she'd like to. She can come to council and say exactly what she told you. I wouldn't advise it. Is she here? Is that her?
She just walked in there.
Wonderful. Come on in, please. We're just talking about your opinion. Yes. I hope you can. Can you state your name for the record?
My name is Garcelle Embry, Deputy City Attorney.
Okay, excellent. Can you tell us what your opinion was on item number 3, as we're on, about the contracting?
Well, as I was informed when we discussed the RFP, that this was going to be a grant-funded RFP. Inasmuch as it is grant-funded, we rely upon funds that are coming in generally year to year based upon the comp plan, CDGB funds. That being said, what we do generally on these RFPs is let the contractor or the people who are going to respond to the contract know that their funds that the contract will be dependent upon the funds coming in from year to year.
And that's the case in this one, right? We're letting them know. Okay. Go ahead.
So we generally let them know in the RFP that a contract will not extend beyond 1 year without funds. And that's the way it's written.
Okay, but we
With
can...
an option to renew based upon the funding coming in from year to year.
But is there anything legally inappropriate if we gave somebody a 3-year contract with the right to rescind that contract with
Legally-
notice if, for some reason, we step into a year where the feds don't give us any con plan money and...
Well, that's why we call it an option to renew based upon the finances that are available.
Yeah, but I asked a specific question. Is there anything legally wrong with contracting for 3 years, but within those 3 years, we
Well-
have the right to cancel that contract if for some reason the con plan money doesn't come from Washington?
Well, here's your issue. If you set out a contract and you're setting out your compensation at the time you contract, say you set it at $500,000. Well, if in fact the first year you know you have $125,000 to give, but you don't have it the following year, you've already agreed with this contractor that you're paying $500,000. So legally, you're having a problem with paying the compensation that you agreed to.
Well, that's an interesting scenario, but the question to that is not to you, but to the department. If, for example, it's a using that example, $500,000 cap contract over 3 years, and we have the right to stop the contract anytime during those 3 years with proper notice, and say in the first 12 months we expend $125,000, are we obligated to give them the other $375,000 across the next couple of years, the way this contract is written? Or, because before you walked in, we were getting clarification from the department that this is a reimbursement for service contract, not I'm sitting on the bench waiting for things to do, but as time goes on, I'm going to bill you for not doing anything.
It's a servicing contract, so every month that they provide service, they get paid. What we were imagining is that it would be a 3-year contract subject to the availability of funding, with then also 2 one-year renewals after that. And didn't you indicate, Neil, that there have been city contracts executed similarly, 3-year contracts with 2 one-year extensions?
Well, I didn't say city contracts. I know with the Housing Authority, we've done, but that's different funding, different agency.
Right. And this source of funding, we're looking at either using municipal housing finance funds, which is revenue generated by the city, or the grant funds.
So it's not just one source, one specific source,
Correct.
that generates activity that would pertain to this contract, should we give this contract to somebody?
Correct.
Well, I think that's the crux of the matter, is the fact that you can come in and say, for instance, you start out with general funds, you run out of the general funds, but you find out that you need to use grant funds, CDGB funds, based upon the next year. And you cannot guarantee a contractor legally that you're going to pay a certain amount and then say, okay, we don't have the funding for it. We do have...
Wait, hold on a second. On that note,
Hold on.
please, no, please.
Okay.
I'm chairing the committee. On that note, right, because I'm trying to follow you. If you say too many things, you lose me.
Okay.
But let's go back to that point. What's the legal matter that we would do wrong by this contract the way it's expected to be written and agreed to with a third party on that point that you just made?
The point is that you cannot guarantee a certain amount of compensation knowing that you don't have the funds to pay. Legally, you're on the hook for the full amount.
No, we're not.
If you put in there that you're saying you're paying $500,000, now you could say that...
No, up to $500,000. We're not guaranteeing that we're going to disperse $500,000 to whoever gets this contract. And if we are writing that way, then we're writing it wrong. Not from a legal sense, just from a basic practical...
I understand it's not to exceed a certain amount, but...
Exactly.
I think there's a difference here. We have been writing contracts all along that say 1-year option to renew based upon the finances. There's nothing changed here. I don't think there's anything new here. I think the contracts we have always done that. I don't understand what the difference is today than what we've been doing before.
We didn't have a difference until it was announced before you walked in the room that somebody in the city attorney's office had an opinion that we shouldn't do a 3+1 with an option of +1+1 on this case.
Let me say this. As far as the 3 years is concerned, we do up to a 3-year contract with the option to renew each year based upon the funding.
Sure.
So I don't...
Okay. In a nutshell, members, I think we're okay, right? I think we just, for some reason, got a little confused there. So therefore, anybody have any questions, the CAO or the department or the city attorney?
Just to simplify this, we're paying a fee for service, so if we don't demand the service, then we don't have to worry about paying anybody.
Correct. And practical matter is that...
We would drive the cost based on our request for servicing.
For the most part, as a practical matter, they're servicing loans we want to keep.
There is no guaranteed payment without the service. If we have the money for the service, we ask for the service, then we pay.
As a practical matter, we want to keep our loans with the servicer so borrowers don't get confused who they have to
Is
pay.
there some benefit to having a long-term contract? Is the department requesting a 3-year contract?
We actually requested a 3-year contract with 2 3-year renewals.
What is the benefit to having a long-term contract versus a year-to-year?
Marketing, basically, we can have the big boys more interested in servicing our loans.
Okay, now you got me worried, but that's a whole different issue.
Yeah.
But
Well, with the big boys, we get higher level
I don't think we can talk about the
expertise.
big boys.
Yeah, don't go there. You don't want to
Oh,
go
I'm sorry.
there. You don't want to go there.
I'm sorry. The larger
Consistency,
firms,
just say consistency with one firm.
consistency with one firm.
Yeah, corporations are non-human entities, so we don't need to reference their gender, but
Okay.
the point being that you can solicit more, perhaps more qualified, or companies with greater qualifications or capacity to service our contract.
Exactly.
Okay, I think that's a very, very standard principle. And the other thing is, if we're doing a 1 year, we'd have to come back to council every year. I
Yeah.
mean,
And you don't want to do that.
that's just expanding our bureaucracy for no reason.
No, generally, we don't come back.
We wouldn't come back to council to
the department, that-
exercise an extension.
No, we don't, generally, no.
We may have to write a report to the mayor's office asking, there may be some additional steps to extending it.
And also, there is the access to the 14.8 of the administrative code section
The
that allows
benefit
for renewal.
of doing it year to year is flexibility in case somebody, we don't like the way their service, but this is not one company, it's a variety of folks, right?
It's actually one company, and they may have subcontractors, but if there's a problem with the service, we can terminate the contract.
Exactly. And mid-year, if we want.
Well,
Right?
you know, I
Standard.
don't think I care, one way or the other. I think the department can handle it either way, so.
Thank you.
Okay, so actually, what we would be voting on is a 3-year contract with the potential of 2 1-year extensions, correct? A 3, possibly +1. Yes,
With subject to funding availability.
Yes.
yes, of course, that's all inherent in the language.
Generally, if it's a general funded contract, that's fine, but if it's grant funded, that's another matter.
It's a legal matter or a practical matter?
It's a legal matter.
Okay, please apprise us of the legal matter.
Generally, on grant-funded contracts, you go up to 3 years, and then you go back out because of the way grant funds are written, that you have to go back out for an RFP. That's legally under the grant funds.
Yeah, but
But that's the point, right? That's the point.
yeah, see that.
No, it's
that's
not
the-
just based upon the service, it's the requirement under grant funds that CDGB, that you go out for an RFP process every 3 years,
Okay,
okay?
correct.
Okay.
But the thing is, with all due respect, notwithstanding the legal matters, what municipalities do all the time, government to government, is if we find ourselves in a quandary, we ask for some kind of waiver or something like that. There are other avenues of which we could actually pursue if we find ourselves in a situation where we say we want to extend it 1 year instead of going back out to RFP, et cetera. I'm not saying we will, but I don't think there's anything inherently illegal about us having a 3-year contract with the option of 2 1-year extensions in that contract. Now, if we find ourselves the department find itself coming down the road saying, well, we need to go back out to RFP, well, then it's inherent upon the department to, in a timely manner, go out to RFP so that we don't have to exercise that 1 year and/or ask for a waiver.
And generally, that's how we've operated. We make sure that we come in at the 3-year period, before the 3-year period, and we
Correct.
go out for RFP.
Correct. But stranger
To-
things
to
have
stay
happened.
within- Well, and there are times we do have to extend contracts because we've gone over that, but it's not a long extension.
Correct. But when we allow ourselves an option and we don't exercise that option, then the point is moot down the road. However, if we allow ourselves that option because stranger things have happened, especially with this municipality, then if we're not doing anything that is going to cause us a legal problem today, I don't see the problem with us approving a 3-year plus with the option of +1 on this particular item. Unless you're going to tell me we put ourselves in a legal problem.
You do as far as grant funds are concerned, but it's your option.
Okay, thank you. All right, we do have one public comment card. Thank you very much. We do have one public comment card, Antonia Ramirez.
Thank you again. We want to scrutinize the Los Angeles Housing Department report and the City Administrative Officer's report relative to your loan servicing contract approvals for criminal illegal aliens, their umbilical cord changos, the freeloading gangbangers, and the criminal chango gangbangers in uniform. Why? Because these so-called housing servicing contracts are nothing more than a bogus city tool, and thereby creating a highly legal breeding ground for the illegal criminal aliens and gangbangers' criminal violent empires. Because if you'll notice, 99% of all criminal illegal aliens and hardcore gangbangers are all on welfare and public assistance, so they would qualify for housing, even though many are using illegal documents, selling, manufacturing, and distributing and using drugs. That creating a lot of money, all kinds of narcotics, and making, of course, lots of moolah. While 99% of all the United States military veterans and all pilots and their respective families are chronically impoverished and or downright homeless with no government assistance and no home of their own. How the holy hell do you explain this? Stop all illegal housing racketeering per the City of Los Angeles and deport all criminal gangbangers and deny them housing, no federal, state, or city subsidies. And lastly, I want to salute and thank the Honorable Governor of Arizona, Jan Brewer, for taking a tough stand against all criminal illegal aliens and gangbangers. I'd also like to know what her position is on issuing housing to these gangbangers and illegal criminal aliens. Again, I speak from experience. I don't speak out of my ass. But having lived with these Latinos and gangbangers in uniforms, many of them will target and attack those of us legal, law-abiding citizens who didn't swim the Rio Grande and who stand for principle and the letter of law. And why do they pick on us? Because they're bullies and because they want to shut us up. But they won't. We will prevail in the end. For those of us who stand on principle and the letter of the law, we will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment on item number 3. As board and so with that, we'll approve the CAO report with the modification of it being a 3-year contract with 2 1-year option extensions. Okay. All right. So that should be the order of this committee. Okay. Now we'll go to item number 6, the last item on the agenda, item number 6.
Item number 6 is a communication from the mayor relative to the 38th program year of the Housing and Community Development Consolidated Plan, 5th Year Action Plan.
Good morning, Annalyn Rosia from the Mayor's Office. I'm joined today by Deborah Wood, who is the Executive Director for the Commission on Community and Family Services. This year's consolidated plan is composed of the Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership Program, Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, HOPLA, and the Emergency Solutions Grant. Similar to last year, at this point, the federal government has not passed a 1-year federal budget for these entitlement programs, so that we are operating on a continuing resolution until November 18th. At this time, because of that, both the House and the Senate have different recommendations for the funding for these grants. Currently, the CDBG funding recommended by the House is increased by 5%, and
I'm sorry, somebody made some noise. Clear that.
this, the House's CDBG recommendation is to increase the entitlement funding by 5%, but the Senate's appropriations bill currently is requesting for it to be decreased by 15%.
So the Republican-controlled House says that they're willing to go with a 5% increase
Yes.
so far.
So far,
And the Democrat-controlled Senate says they want a 10% decrease?
15% decrease.
15%
That's
decrease?
correct.
I was thinking the difference, 10%.
That's correct.
Okay, continue.
Okay, so furthering compound.
I'm worried the president's a Democrat. I think we're in trouble. Go ahead.
And, well, I do want to say one significant problem we have with the House appropriations bill is it reduces the admin cap from 20% to 10%. So that will be a significant reduction to our admin capacity here in the city. So I do want to note there is a concern regarding the House appropriations bill, okay? The other thing that I want to draw attention to is last year, when we faced a 16% cut in CDBG funding, we were able to offset it with increase in our program income and program year savings, prior year savings. This year, we are anticipating a reduction in that, primarily because last year's program income was due to a one-time CRA loan repayment that isn't available this year. So even if we get the House approved level of a 5% increase, we are still anticipating an overall reduction of a 9% decrease. As a result of that, in this year's CON plan, we are only requesting new applications under the economic development and neighborhood improvement categories. And we also requested that ongoing programs submit budgets that reflect an 8% and a 15% budget exercise, just in case that we do face further reductions when we do the determination. So we wanted to do that analysis early on. For the other funding programs, the House is projecting to, or proposing to decrease it by 25%. The Senate is proposing to decrease that by 38%. For the HOPWA program, there is 0% increase at the House level, and at the Senate level, it's a modest decrease of 1%. For the ESG program, it's now called it switched from the Emergency Shelter Program to the Emergency Solutions Program. The House keeps it at level funding, but the Senate does increase it to 27%. I think the primary reason for the Senate increasing it to 27% is because now, according to the HEART Act, it requires that the Emergency Solutions Grant dedicate 40% of its funding for rapid rehousing and homeless prevention. Before that, it was primarily used for homeless services. So, any questions regarding the federal budget?
I have a question regarding the 37th year program and the 38th year program. What's the potential for rollover?
So right now, every year we go through a mid-year reprogramming exercise. Usually when we're doing well and we have unspent balances, we might allocate it mid-year. But in the past 4 or so years, we actually have overextended a lot of our funding. So we go through a sweeping exercise where we look at prior year savings. And we look at closeouts to see if there's any savings from prior projects that are no longer needed. And instead of doing a separate mid-year reprogramming, we've rolled that into the next year's program. And again, to offset any of our reductions in our entitlement.
So does it look like there's any potential for any money there to be
We
rolled
haven't
over?
completed that exercise. The Community Development Department is starting that now, so they are contacting all of the implementing departments to look at all their existing programs to identify if there's been any savings identified. We are tentatively projecting, based on prior experience, that it'll be around $4 million. Again, that is still a very rough estimate.
Okay, appreciate that. Now, when is the department expected to come forward with their better estimations from the feedback in the field?
We are anticipating that they would have that recommendation in mid-November.
Okay, so in about 30 days. Any questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a quick question.
Member Perry.
Have you given any analysis to what programs might be deemed unfeasible due to a continued lack of funding or significant reductions, and how did you prioritize that?
We are still, it's the ongoing process. The department's looking at the current applications. The applications deadline actually got extended to this Friday due to technical difficulties that people were facing in the influx in applications. So they have not seen all of the submitted applications. Based on that, we will look, the department will look at the proposed 8% and 15% reductions and see if there's any issues with the feasibility of good team programs.
And then what framework will you look at that through to determine which programs should have priority?
At this time, we are looking to overall support existing delivery systems just because of the capacity to implement programs citywide and also to provide outcomes-driven results. So that is one aspect of it, and also it has a stronger request for proposal process as opposed to a one-time application process. So that is one thing to consider. Other things to consider are leverage resources and how that might influence that program.
Okay. Question? Okay. Seeing no more questions, we are on item number 5, 6? 6, thank you. I'm confused. Item number 6, we do not have any public comment cards on item number 6. Public comment is now open on item number 6. Seeing no one come forward, it's now closed. So with that, we'll instruct that the mayor to report with the proposed 38th program year consolidated plan by December 19th to this committee. Yes.
We actually requested until the end of December, primarily because the budget might be impacted by the results of the super committee, and so we wanted to make sure we have further time to see if there would be any impact as a result of that.
Yeah, I think the week of the 19th is the last week that we'll be having committee hearings, and until usually the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th of January, depending on when the first Monday and Tuesday comes up. So as of right now, our staff will continue to dialogue with you to see if we can have enough information to decipher an informed report by the 19th. Otherwise, obviously, that's beyond your control if we're waiting for substantive information from Washington, and then we'll hear the report as soon as we get back in January. Okay?
Thank you.
So that'll be the case for this committee. Okay.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair. For clarification, are we continuing this item?
No. Okay. Yeah, just a report back. Okay, so therefore, technically, it's a receive and file. So, receive and file the report, and we'll look forward to the subsequent report.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, that concludes the items on today's agenda. We do have one general public comment card, Antonia Ramirez. It is now time for general public comment. Just make sure we set that
Again, thank you
clock.
very much. And as a matter of principle, I'm not a butt kisser, and I come here to expose. I don't come here to hang out with the politicos or the politicians, but I come in good faith to disclose and expose with full transparency. Again, what I am demanding of the Chief of Police of Los Angeles and the Honorable Sheriff Lee Baca, who I happen to respect and admire, and that is to please separate all the Latino pocket neighborhoods like Pacoimas, Panorama Cities, Union Station areas, as well as East LA, and separate and disperse these Chango gangbangers in uniform and bring in a good, level-headed, wholesome, responsible, respectable, with integrity, moral values, ethics, and just human dignity, police officers and deputies who will make lawful arrests and who will give us equal protection under the law, whether you are a legal citizen or a military veteran. Again, these crooked, corrupted deputies are Cruz, Aguirre, Henry Romero, Daniel Lopez, Lomeli, Pedro Mejia, Valencia, Duran, female Sandoval, female Parra, Pacheco, Martinez, J. Murillo, Hector Andujo, and George Bernal. They are not only mentally deranged, 5150, but they are unethical, unscrupulous, and they should get a job as drag queens with a little falda and tacones and a brassiere. I think they can kick ass and do something else rather than doing law enforcement. They're not cut out for it. We want men with huevos who can use analytical and reasoning skills and make lawful arrests and go after the gangbangers and the illegal wetbacks. I thank you very much.
That concludes our general public comment for this committee. This committee is now adjourned.